one of the most tragic incidents or tragic bombings so far in Iran, which was the killing of 165 schoolgirls together with their teachers. And Donald Trump was asked about it and who's responsible for that? Who did that? Here is what Donald Trump said.
States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating?
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done. We think it was done by Iran
Can you give us an
because
idea?
they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
Yeah, here is Ray. Moments ago, the video of the attack, the bombing came out. The footage came out from the Iranian media. Yeah, this is the exact moment that they hit the school. Your understanding of that, Ray?
Nima, there are certain things that cannot be justified, cannot be explained, and cannot be lied about. Now, the girls at that school were killed. Now, let me emphasize that the number is up to 170 now. As you know better than I, the Iranians are very careful not to double count, okay? And they had to put various arms and legs together. So imagine what that was like. Okay. Well, the attack on the school happened before the Iranians knew they were being attacked, for God's sake. So the notion that the Iranians did this themselves, you have a temporal impossibility. It happened immediately in the first wave. It happened at about 8:30 in the morning, if memory serves, local time, and the supreme leader was killed at precisely the same time. It's well recognized now that this was done by American fire, not Israeli. There's been no acknowledgement of that except what you just saw, what you just played. And there's been no photos. There have been no press coverage because it's been kept under the surface. Now, given the possibility of the explanation that Trump, and you remember he was interrupted by Hexel, we're still investigating. So nobody's going to be able to prove that that was done by the Iranians. Why would they do that? I mean, in my tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition, which is also Islam tradition, blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. The Quran, as you know better than I, is full of that same phrase, the all-merciful. You be merciful like the all-merciful. What about us? We've changed that. We show no mercy. Witness Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, now calls himself Secretary of War. We show no mercy. Okay. Well, that's a little different from the American and the religious heritage that I and that presumably you come out of, Nima. We show no mercy. Well, if that's what results from our showing no mercy, I think we have to hold these people accountable. How did that school get targeted? Now, the benign explanation is, it was near, or it was used by the Revolutionary Guards some years back, 5 or 7 years, and they never updated the target set. That's the benign. Now, Scott Ritter goes through chapter and verse as to you never target things without updating the target set and making sure that what you're targeting is not a girls' school, but a Revolutionary Guard outpost. Okay, so the other suggestion, and this is speculation on my part, somebody put that in the target set. Okay, now who would that have been? Well, that would have been somebody who wanted to make it just as bad as could be. So the Iranians would be knee-jerkedly responsible or irresponsible enough to knee-jerk a really powerful reaction, maybe fire at one of those aircraft carriers we have in the area or something else, and there would be full-scale war. The US and Israel would then have a chance to engage, and if the engagement was ever provocable, it would be by, number one, killing the supreme leader. Number two, how about throwing in 170 girls as well? So, I mean, I sent you a couple of photos, Nima. I don't know if you had time to look at them or even download them. It was just a few minutes ago. And I understand one has been taken down from X now because its content is, oh, wow, okay. Now, this is after, okay? This is the lineup, but you can't see the end of the line there. Those are the little girls' bodies, okay? They were available in an article that came out from Dubai today. And so somehow they escaped censorship. So that's after. That's after they're prepared for burial. Nima, do you have the one before? I sent it in the last one just about
Yeah,
9 minutes ago.
the one before.
The one
I
that
don't have it available
shows
here, Ray.
shows the two little girls. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one that's been pulled off. All it does is show two dead little girls who look like about 8 or 9 years old with their school dress on and their. So I think we have to remain human here. We have to hold people who say on our behalf, like Hegseth did at the same time, we show no mercy. Okay. And the best thing I do at this part, besides crying, all right, is to cite a little poetry. Now, it won't take a second here, but it consoles me and it confronts me because it talks about people standing up in this kind of situation and the kind of abuse we cannot continue to allow. It's by my friend Daniel Berrigan, a Jesuit priest who is a very good anti-war, anti-violence preacher. This is the poem. It's not published. It's something that I copied off a Catholic worker wall when I was staying with the Catholic workers in the Bowery of New York. It's not published. It was sent especially to these Catholic workers. The title is Some. S-O-M-E. Some. I'll read it. Some stood up once and sat down. Some walked a mile and then walked away. Some stood up twice, then sat down. I've had it, they said. Some walked 2 miles, then walked away. It's too much, they cried. Some stood and stood and stood. They were taken for fools. They were taken for having been taken in. Some walked and walked and walked. They walked the earth, they walked the waters, they walked the air. Why do you stand? They were asked, and why do you walk? Because of the children, they said, and because of the heart, and because of the bread, because the cause is the heart's beat, and the children born, and the risen bread. These horrors need to be confronted we do it in a merciful, nonviolent way, but we stand and we walk and we don't stop. That's the confrontation I get out of this very, very poignant poem by my friend Dan Berrigan, who wrote it many years ago in similar circumstances. I hope your audience doesn't mind my reading that.
Yeah. Ray, the war is escalating and it's getting to the oil sources, oil reserves in Iran, in Tehran, and then desalination plants, and it's getting out of the hand. How do you evaluate, how do you assess the current situation with the war? Or does Armageddon loom, in your opinion?
Well, if we talk about economic punishment, everyone is being punished here. We in the United States less than others because we have our own drilling and our own oil. But Europe is in dire straits. And even Mr. Putin has uncharacteristically arranged an interview in which his favorite interviewer does the normal stuff, and then after 2 minutes said, well, what about all that natural gas and oil that you used to give to Europe? And Putin says, well, yeah, that was cut off, wasn't it? And look what happened. And we have some still. We could cut that off again. Let me think about it. Oh, the Europeans say they're going to buy any next year, so well, maybe we're going to finish it right now and cut them off. My God, what will happen if the Europeans can't get gas or oil from Russia? They still get a good bit of it. And what about the natural gas supplies from was it Dubai? I guess it is one of those Gulf things that's been cut off. So as you remember, Nima, it would be, in my view, 10 days ago, crazy to risk having the Strait of Hormuz blocked, and that's why I said in my own infantile way, well, that's why it will never happen. I mean, nobody's that crazy. Well, it turns out that the people running this policy, that this war for the United States, are not only crazy, but they're misinformed or they're just delusional. Look at what Trump has been saying. We're just going to win, and that does not correspond to reality. So if, as is my wont, I try to put myself in the shoes of Kremlin leaders, I say to myself, oh my God, this guy is capable of anything. Now, do I think that Trump would be ready to use nuclear weapons? I have been wrong before, but I still don't think so. Do I think that Israel would use nuclear weapons? I do. Now, I've been learning as this whole process unfolds, sometimes from your other guests, that it is altogether likely that Israel can be discombobulated, if not destroyed, because the air defenses they have, the Iron Dome and the Patriot missiles, have been proven to be ineffectual against Iranian missiles that go at a high velocity. Okay, so what's changed since last June? I don't know. I don't think enough has changed. And so what I'm saying here is the logic is this: Israel cannot defend itself against Iranian hypersonic missiles. That has been proven. I mean, we have case. Now, Israel has been able to hide the damage so far because of the censorship on almost all photos getting out. Okay. Now, what happens if my military analyst colleagues are right and say the Iranians place Netanyahu in dire straits? Will he resort to using a nuclear weapon? And my answer to that is, knowing what I know about this person, yes, he probably would. And my God, that sends the hair on the back of my neck straight up. So hopefully someone will be able to mediate this thing before that happens. And I think the Russians actually are sort of sending out feelers. Putin himself talked to all the Gulf leaders there, and he has contacts with Israel as well. I mean, they're 2 million Russians living in Israel now. So he's got the capability. Donald Trump says, "So I have a great relationship with Mr. Putin." Well, I don't know if that's so anymore, but you know, that would be one. India would be another possible mediator. There are people with high stakes in this, and let's just hope that Hexeth and Trump, who are certifiably delusionary narcissists, beating their breasts, real men go to Iran, as was said 23 years ago, right? When they did Iraq, it said because it was easier. Well, Iran has not gotten any easier. And as I diagnose things and as I see the reporting that comes from reliable sources, the Israelis are hiding their real serious losses. The Iranians are not saying much except, look, no more ceasefire until we're done with this. And the Iranians have the upper hand. And in the final analysis, it may depend on whether, unlike Pete Hegseth's no mercy, the Iranians will rein in themselves and say, all right, look, we have a different ethos here. If you decide to fulfill these terms of peaceful coexistence, and it's guaranteed by people like Russia and China, we can deal with you without obliterating you. This may be visionary, and you would know more than me, Nima, but I kind of think that their faith, their religion, your religion, if you're a believer of Islam, is a much more merciful religion these days, and that Christian Zionism is what do they call it, misnomer, or it's self-contradictory because you can't be a Zionist and a Christian at the same time. And I nominate you, Nima, to be our next ambassador to Israel. Huckabee, I would actually put in the local gas station if he could handle that kind of job. So I'll before I get more silly, I'll stop.
Ray, you've mentioned something so important. I think there is a lot of disinformation, misinformation about Islam out there, and many people don't understand how, Islam is not. It's so much deep. It's so much important in everyday life of Iranians. I remember my grandma, grandpa. These are, it's part of the culture. It's not something outside of the culture. It's part of me. It is not something that I believe in. It's part of me. It's me. It's like the Christian. You're a Christian. You know how that works because it's somehow it captures all of your belief system. It influences the way that you think, the way you act, the way you love people. You know it and everything today's mainstream media reports on Islam, it's all about disinformation and misinformation to demonize people, demonize Islam, demonize the Islamic countries. And it has nothing to do with the reality, Ray. You have to go to Iran, you have to talk with the people in Iran, you see how kind they are, how you know it's not even imaginable for many people outside of Iran or outside of is Islamic countries. I would say it's not just about Iran. It's about Gaza. It's about Palestine. It's about all of these countries.
Yeah. And Nima, I often point out that the intelligence analysts have to read everything, and that goes from the sublime to the ridiculous. For example, George W. Bush's memoir, Decision Points, where he points out that yes, Cheney and he fully intended to attack Iran on their way out of office in 2008. And I'll just say one more time, he was prevented from doing that by honest intelligence analysts, if you can believe it. a national intelligence estimate, November 2007, quote, we assess that Iran stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2003 and has not resumed work on a nuclear weapon. Whoa. Does the intelligence community still say that? Well, they did exactly a year ago when Tulsi Gabbard got up under oath with a congressionally required testimony. They call it the annual threat assessment. And she said, we see no change. We see no change in the fatwa that the Supreme Leader issued back in 2003, as we have been reporting every year since. My God, that was the truth. Now, oh, who did that? That was Tulsi Gabbard. Where's she now? My God, she's sort of. I mean, I have a cartoonist working on a a half-gallon milk carton. You know what that looks like, right? And missing information required for finding who kidnapped Tulsi Gabbard. To call this number. I mean, it's not even funny. Where the heck is she? We do know that a leak to the Washington Post said that her National Intelligence Council, reporting directly for her, said, look, there's no chance we could do regime change in Iran. And that paper came out a week before the attack. And I imagine the briefings preceded that by several weeks. So here's somebody close to Tulsi, I don't know, somebody who worked on that, who knew about it and is honest, going to the New York Times and said, look, I hate to tell you that we told you so, and we told him, Hegseth, and we told Trump so, but we did, and here's the proof. So something very sinister is going on. I think it bears repeating that on the 26th of February, there was a meeting in Geneva, sort of brokered and mediated by the foreign minister of Oman, okay? And we had Witkoff and the son-in-law on one side, and we had the foreign minister of Iran on the other. How did that work out? Well, I don't have to speculate. I don't have to point to one side or the other and their account. We have the foreign minister of Oman coming on a plane to Washington the next day and talking to our vice president, and then talking to Margaret Brennan of CBS, saying, we're this close, man. This is terrific, because the Iranians have shown incredible flexibility on the enrichment thing. They're even willing to maybe have some U.S. boots on the ground. I mean, so it looks really good. That was the 27th. Midnight, or as soon as the 28th dawned, what do? We kill 170 girls between the age of 7 and 12, and we kill the supreme leader. I mean, I'll just add this, Nima. There is a theory, and I would not call it a conspiracy theory, that whoever did these things in the first wave was hell-bent and determined to make sure that Iran would overreact. And then if the results of that were so heinous, let's say Israel got pretty much destroyed, then there would be justification for finishing things off. And how do you do that? Here's one of these little nuclear weapons that Netanyahu has, the technology for which was stolen from the United States, including by including by Netanyahu. And we've winked at this, and now it's coming home to roost. The other thing I will say is that the Russians are in this. What's interesting to me, Nima, is that Mr. Putin, for all his perspicaciousness, for all his caution and statesmanship, I would say, did some things which really surprised the hell out of me. First and foremost was concluding a mutual defense treaty with North Korea. Oh, now, maybe it's too stereotypical to say the North Korean leaders are crazy. It is, I think. But he did it. And so if North Korea were attacked, Russia would be bound to assist them, and vice versa, as was shown when the Kursk invasion came from Ukraine into Kursk for Russia proper, okay? That tens of thousands of North Koreans helping them out there. So that was surprising to me. I didn't think Putin would do that. And then, he's put Oreshniks now in Belarus. So the ties between Belarus have never been more strong or tight. And, the notion that he would like to have a mutual defense treaty with Iran, I thought that was, I thought that was a bridge too far. I mean, look at Iran. I mean, it's going to be attacked by the United States, maybe, or Israel. Putin wouldn't want that. I was wrong on that too. I mean, even old people can learn new tricks. But it was the Iranians that resisted a mutual defense treaty with Russia. Russia was trying to get one. And this process went on for 2.5 years. It finally ended up with a very big strategic cooperation treaty, but it fell far short of the kind of treaty the Russians have with North Korea, the kind of arrangements they have with Belarus. And it was the Iranians. Now, you probably can explain better than I why the Iranians would resist having that kind of treaty. But now I think the Russians are in a position to say, look, we wish we'll work with it now. You have been attacked. We have all kinds of sophisticated satellite imagery. And we're talking not only photography, we're talking infrared. We're talking radar. We're talking multispectral. We have those. The Russians have those. And so the Iranians, if they're in receipt of these things, have pinpointed just about all our facilities and all our warships and so forth in the area. Now, when that report first came out 2 days ago, I hurriedly consulted my best Russian analyst friend, a retired professor. He's a historian, but to his credit, he's become a journalist like I try to be, okay? So he says, Ray, he says, what do you mean? You have any doubts about that they would do that? I said, well, no, I guess not. But what do you think? He says, it's called karma, right? You know what karma is? What's the U.S. doing in Ukraine to allow them to target Russian forces? So now we can laugh at karma, but this is a very serious situation because never before during the Cold War or since has a nuclear power, and I mean Israel, had the ability and probably and will have the incentive to use a nuclear weapon in extremis. And if my military colleagues are correct, and they have been correct up till now, Israel will be in extremis. So the sooner we can tamp this damn thing down, the better. The results are, I mean, some commentators have said, I don't even want to go there. That's too horrible to imagine. Well, we intelligence analysts aren't allowed to do that. We have to go there. That's my judgment. And I was on last night with Joe Loria and Patrick Lawrence, who are no slouches. And we all three of us agreed that it's not only, well, that it's not 50-50 anymore. In extremis, that is Netanyahu, probably would want to use one of those nuclear weapons. And if we importuned and said, please, Bibi, dear, please don't, and he would just say, look, and let me just add one thing. With respect to Israel using nuclear weapons, people forget. Now, I was on duty for all this, so I know chapter and verse, and I still remember a lot of stuff, all right? Now, 1967, the Israelis just waltzed in. They made believe there was a threat from Nasser. They later admitted, actually, it was the former Israeli prime minister admitted that there was no threat from the Egyptians. We moved because we saw that we could defeat them and destroy them. I'll remember his name in a second. Anyhow, 1973, oh my God, the Arabs did attack Israel. Okay, and what happened? This is really interesting. Golda Meir threatened to use nuclear weapons. And this set Henry Kissinger and his boss up the kazoo. Okay, Kissinger goes right over there and says, "Okay, look, we'll resupply. We'll give you everything, but don't do that." Okay. Now you can imagine how fragile or how dangerous that situation was, because Golda Meir, I think, might have done
Golda
that.
Meir, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
So now we have Netanyahu. He's much more sensible and reasonable than Golda Meir, right? No, not right at all. So here's the story that not many people know. Kissinger and Nixon talked about, well, my God, that was close. That was close. How do we prevent this from ever happening again? They said, Kissinger, I know, Mr. President, a mutual defense treaty with Israel that would, if we do a mutual defense treaty with Israel, no one will ever think of attacking Israel again. Nixon, good idea, sell that. Now, I have friends that were on active duty at that time. Ray Close is one of them, since deceased. He was part of Ajax, the operation that got rid of Mossadegh, the freely elected prime minister of Iran. So he knew this whole thing, and he was deputized to go talk to the Saudi princes and say, look, we're going to try to do this or that. And others did the same thing. Well, they went to the Israelis and they said, look, we don't want this to happen again. We'd like to have a mutual defense treaty. Mutual defense treaty, of course, is where one side is bound by law, by treaty, to assist the other if the other is attacked. Now, the Israelis said, now get this, folks. The Israelis said, oh, isn't that sweet? Thanks, but no thanks. Now, what country in its right mind would refuse a mutual defense treaty with the most powerful at the time country in the world? Well, the reasons were this. Mutual defense treaties require internationally recognized boundaries. Okay. And Israel didn't want any part of that. The other thing was Israel had this great arrangement with the United States where if they wanted to attack Syria or Lebanon, well, they would go ahead and do it, and they'd ask for forgiveness rather than permission, and wouldn't even let the U.S. know ahead of time. A mutual defense treaty requires, a real one, requires one side to inform the other if they're going to go off half-cocked trying to attack another country or doing it. And so the Israelis didn't want that either. So the Israelis felt, look, we have all the senators, for God's sake. We've got the representatives. We've got the president. Why we don't? Thanks very much, but we don't want to have this business about defining the borders, which are internationally accepted, which they never will be, hopefully. And we don't want to have to tell you when we want to do things like bomb the hell out of Syria or Iraq or whatever. So this is the irony of the whole thing. We are not allies of Israel, even though we try to make them allies. And to call them allies is not a correct term to use, because allies in the legal sense mean a country with whom you have a mutual defense treaty. Allies in the broader sense doesn't mean anything legally.